Hi there, my name is Webster Wheeler. In the past, I've spoken up many times on forums and whatnot. As an exotic animal enthusiast myself, and I've spoken up on behalf of other exotic animal enthusiasts. And today I would like to speak by video and give you my perspective on the keeping of exotic animals, where it's come from, a little bit about me, and where the keeping of exotic animals, I hope, is going. I'm 62 years old. I've been keeping exotic animals for over 50 years. I started keeping tropical fish when I was 10 years old. I've kept all kinds of aquariums, freshwater, marine, brackish, planted aquariums, coral reef aquariums, you name it. I started off back in the 1960s, and back then aquarium keeping was kind of just getting started. This was back in the days when aquariums were made with tar, a slate bottom, and a chrome frame, and if you moved it in the slightest way, if it wasn't perfectly level, the tar could split, the water would drain out of your aquarium, and all of your fish and hard work could be lost. We've come a long way since then. Silicone has enabled aquarium manufacturers to make all glass tanks that stay together for 20, 30 years, no problem. I've seen the aquarium keeping hobby come from a place where people could barely keep things alive, especially in the marine hobby, to today there are growing, thriving coral reefs with reef fishes reproducing in people's living rooms and, yes, in people's basements too. It's gotten to the point where technology is so good in the aquarium keeping hobby that an aquarist is now able to control just about every aspect of his or her aquarium from anywhere in the world over the internet. They can control the hours of lighting, the intensity of lighting. They can control the motion of the water through pumps, all of that over the internet. And it's led to tremendous successes in the science and art of aquarium keeping. I've also been a reptile and amphibian hobbyist as well for a little over 20 years. When I first started keeping reptiles, people were not really breeding them, they were just learning about them. Today, people keep and breed reptiles on a regular basis. In the ball python keepers realm of the exotic animal hobby, ball pythons have now been produced with so many recessive traits. There's probably no other plant or animal in the world that has so many different color morphs and patterns as ball pythons. And that's all thanks to reptile hobbyists that have been breeding them and working with them for the past 20 years. Unfortunately, technology in the reptile hobby has not been as quick to catch up. It took a long time in the aquarium hobby for technology to come into play, but it's starting to come into play in the reptile hobby as well. People are now realizing that you need full spectrum lighting, you need the proper environment to keep these animals. But if you give them this environment, they're going to do very well. They're going to breed, they're going to reproduce for you, and they'll do very well. That's a little bit about where I'm coming from as far as keeping exotic animals go. And now I would like to talk a little bit about people who oppose the keeping of exotic animals and why they do that. You'll hear three main arguments against the keeping of exotic animals. Number one is that wild animals belong in the wild. Well, that sounds pretty reasonable, but, I look out my window, I see birds flying around, they're wild, I see bees, I see squirrels, sometimes I'll see a raccoon. They're all wild animals, and they're in my backyard. So does that mean my exotic animals belong in my backyard? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's what they meant. I don't even know exactly what they meant, because a lot of these animals come from areas where if you were to put them back, they would die right away because their habitats have been destroyed. That's the first thing they'll say. Wild animals belong in the wild. The second thing that you'll often hear said is that they don't make good pets. Exotic animals do not make good pets. And they'll say, well, they're just, people cannot provide for their needs. The animals suffer and die. And I have to disagree with part of that. I agree that exotic animals don't make good pets for a 2-year-old. I agree that exotic animals don't make good pets for showboaters that just want a novelty pet to show it off. But if you're serious about your pets, if you're a responsible pet keeper, which the vast majority of pet keepers I've met and that I hear about are, then you will research your pet and you will do the best you can to look after it. And the technology is there for you today to be able to keep exotic pets very well and meet all of their needs. The last argument you'll hear in favor or against keeping of exotic animals is they're a danger. They're a danger. They hurt people and they have diseases. I'd like to point out that and the main disease they talk about is salmonella. And I'd like to point out that salmonella is everywhere. You read in the newspaper all the time, bean sprouts have salmonella, peanuts have salmonella, chicken has salmonella. You have to wash and clean your kitchen very carefully because of salmonella. Salmonella is food poisoning. It's not that serious unless you have complications. Otherwise, it's just diarrhea for a few days. But they make salmonella sound really bad. And I'd like you to think about this. If you have an exotic animal, you're going to keep it enclosed. It's not going to be roaming around. It's going to be in some kind of aquarium or terrarium where you can keep an eye on it. And if it doesn't have salmonella, well, it's probably not going to get salmonella. And if it has salmonella, well, that's easy to cure as well. You can take your animal to a vet and cure it that way. It's easy to cure. So that's having salmonella is not a big problem. Of course, you're not going to catch salmonella from an animal that doesn't have it, and as long as it stays in your aquarium or terrarium, doesn't go outdoors, doesn't come in and out like a cat or dog does, well, it's probably more safe as far as germs and whatnot than a cat or a dog. Also, I'd like to say at this point that, in my opinion, my favorite pet is a snake. Now, why is that? Well, because they're quiet, they're clean, they're very low maintenance, and if you treat them properly, they actually do make loving pets. My snakes, I know they like me. I can tell by the way they react around me. And that. So, I hope this has given you a little bit more perspective on the keeping of exotic animals, where I'm coming from. My name is Webster Wheeler. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.